All right, welcome everybody. Really pleased that you could all make it along today. This is another one in our webinar series for the year. It's very much focused on a particular project, reviewing the existing postcodes for the collection rebates. We're keen to get your feedback, but before sending out the in addition to sending out the consultation paper, we wanted to just tell you what we were up to in that way and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions. And then also just going to give you an update on other things that we're up to at the moment. And so I think that's all by way of introduction. Just great that everybody could come. And I'm going to hand over to Jade, who's going to lead you through the technical detail of the consultation. Thanks, Jade.
Thanks, Libby, and welcome everybody. And I believe this will be recorded, so if you'd like to come back and listen, you'll be sent a link after the webinar. Great. So as Libby mentioned, the purpose of today is to go through in a bit more detail the consultation paper we released just under a month ago regarding having a review of the way that we currently designate the postcodes for metro and regional rebates. So the agenda today is we'll go through the purpose of this review. We'll go through a bit more detail of how the postcodes are currently designated with the metro and regional areas. We'll again review the consultation questions that we have in this consultation paper, and then I'll go through what the process is for submitting, for reviewing your input, and then remind you of the due dates and actions for your feedback to be submitted to us. And then at the end, Libby's going to provide an update on some current other pieces of work that we have that are taking up a lot of our time, but we'll be delivering some really interesting benefits to the scheme, and we'll also have time for questions. So I'll kick in. Anyone is welcome to ask questions. Please just put up your hand or type it in the chat, and or if not, you can ask a question at the end. So what are the B-cycle collection rebates, and why are we reviewing them? Since we launched in January 2022, we have had collection rebates that have been defined as metro and regional. The purpose of these rebates was that we wanted to incentivize or ensure that regional areas also had access to battery recycling, and that collectors and transporters of batteries would have an incentive to go to service these areas by being able to have access to a higher rebate rate from us. So again, the differing amounts were that we wanted to address the really obvious geographical disadvantages of regional areas across Australia, and then also we wanted to make sure that we also include some of the considerations regarding a lack of processing of batteries in each jurisdiction, and that nearly a lot of areas had the batteries have to be transported significant distances to the existing recycling facilities currently on Australia's east coast. So just to remind you that these have been in place since January 2022. Since the scheme has been operating over 18 months now, we've obviously had feedback on a variety of things, not just the postcodes, but we have had some recent requests to review these designations and to make sure that they are reflective of the geographical and economic challenges of battery transport, and to go out to the industry and community to make sure that they are appropriate. So currently the metro and rebate regional designations were defined through what are Australia's capital cities and regional areas through the Department of Home Affairs. There is a few different departments in government that have slightly different classifications of what metro area is in Australia. So this was the one that was chosen at the time. So metro area is, again, one of the capital cities or a regional hub by the Department of Home Affairs, and they currently include the cities and regional areas of Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra, the Gold Coast, Melbourne, Newcastle, Lake Macquarie, Sydney, the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, and Wollongong, Illawarra. The regional rebate areas were obviously all of those areas that fit outside of the metro postcodes on the left side, but we also provide a special designation, if they were coming from the Northern Territory, Tasmania, or Western Australia, just because of the significant distances to reach the recycling facilities on the East Coast. This next slide, we also included it in the consultation paper, but it's really a closer look of what these postcodes are for the metro region. So again, these are the areas included as metro that receives a 250 per kilo rebate, and then all other areas receive the 350 per kilo area. So as I mentioned, we have received some feedback that potentially these are not the most appropriate way to designate between metro and regional areas in Australia. So in the paper that we provided out for consultation, we had the following questions included. Obviously, we don't expect you to answer all of the questions, but happy if you can. And really, we wanted to get information on the following. So the first question there is that are the existing postcode arrangements appropriate to define metro and regional areas for the purposes of the rebate collection? If they aren't, please describe how they are appropriate or inappropriate. What changes or updates might be required to make a more appropriate metro or regional postcode? Should we use a different framework? Yeah, that's basically we wanted to see what actions might be necessary. And again, what changes are necessary. We need to know this because we need to develop a business case and do an economic review to really model the cost benefit case of any change. Are there other frameworks or definitions of metro and regional areas that might be more appropriate? And again, this is where we have had some feedback. So if you do think there is a different framework or definition, please let us know and provide a rationale as to why it might be more appropriate. And then some of the other questions, again, are looking at, have we done the right thing with a special designation for the Northern Territory, Tasmania, and WA? Potentially, some of these might not be considered regional, or maybe another state or jurisdiction should be considered regional and one of these should be taken off. I don't know. Again, would it be better to remove this designation? Could we use the results in another way? And lastly, is there other information that we might be aware of or we need to be informed of when we are considering reviewing the metro and regional rebate application? Oops, excuse me. So the feedback that we'll receive from yourselves will be used to inform the BSC board decision to discuss or really discussion on whether or not we do need to update and change these regional and metro rebate definitions. We might be looking at how they're defined and if we can potentially change the rebate claim amount. If the feedback is strongly suggesting another approach to the existing one that we have, we'll also have to provide a cost benefit analysis to be undertaken and reviewed before any update or decision can be made by the board. So essentially, we'll ask you for response and information, and if there's a strong suggestion for otherwise, we'll need to present that case with this cost benefit analysis to the board. The timelines for this are coming up soon, but hopefully you've had enough time to consider what you'd like to submit. Please submit via email to contact@bsc.org.au. Obviously, I'm happy to discuss with you what you think might be different, but only written submissions will be considered. It's really hard for me to argue any case without that written support from yourselves. The deadline is Friday, the 1st of September, and then the any information and a recommendation or the discussion will be with the board will happen in the late October board meeting this year. So those are sort of the process and the timelines going forward. So I did anticipate this would be pretty quick because hopefully if you had any questions already, you might have reached out to me, but I guess, are there any questions at this time about the consultation that we're undertaking? I realize I can't see the chat, so if any one of my colleagues sees a chat that I should address, please let me know.
Can't see anything there at the moment.
Thanks. Libby, did you want to add anything to the consultation information?
I think you did a really nice job. Thanks, Jade.
Thanks. I'll hand over to you then, Libby.
All right. I just thought it was a good opportunity to give you everybody an update on other major work that we have in the works. We've got a couple of publications that will be coming out over the next couple of months. One is the life cycle analysis, which is really interesting, and I think you'll all be pleased to hear about the top lines at the ABRI conference next week at the summit. Also, we've got the market analysis coming out and the positive charge report. So we'll definitely, give you some heads up when that's getting closer, but they're definitely in the works at the moment. We've got this consultation, but we've also got planned a couple of others. One of the exemptions that we had under our authorisation was to do work on button battery safety. And with that in mind, we're about to release in sort of late September, October, some button battery home storage container protocols that will be used as the basis for either endorsing or approving or accrediting the container and then promoting it. We're just in the process of going to the ACCC about that, but once we've got through that stage, then we would love to get everybody's feedback on that. We also have really seen the need to update the B-cycle drop-off point container protocols, particularly as we're seeing increasing larger e-bike batteries and so forth in the system. We want to make sure that those container protocols are appropriate and provide the right appropriate level of risk management. We also, obviously, the accreditation process is continuing. We have 3 recyclers accredited, 2 of whom are also operating as collectors, sorters, and recyclers. In addition to that, we also have 6 recyclers in action right now and another 2 in progress. We've got we're rolling out audits over the next 3 or 4 months. 18 are planned for collectors, sorters and recyclers, so that'll be announced mostly, but we are planning to start doing a couple of unannounced audits as well. And we're doing some drop-off point health checks just to see how that process is working as well. We are also looking to update the audit template for collectors, sorters and recyclers just to make that process a little bit easier. We've digitised the drop-off point commitment and code of practice document so that you'll be able to, drop-off points and collectors will be able to do that process online. The idea being that we just reduce a bit of the burden there, but managing all that paperwork. The auditors, our independent audit firm, also going to be doing an independent review, looking back at all of the audits that have been conducted over the last year and showing for each of the different requirements how it's gone, where we can learn and make tweaks and improvements to the system. And then over the next 6 months or so, we're also looking to do a more strategic, broader review of the scheme, which will be interesting. Lots happening on the comms front as well. Kara's been flat out. We're in the final stages of getting the awareness campaign rolled out for drop-off points. The safety labels have now been printed and are out for distribution. I've just put the next bullet in the wrong place, but the next relevant bullet really is that we will be required to track application of those labels. We have to report to the ACCC on the 1st of November to let them know what percentage of the network has now been using them. There's a bit of flexibility. It could be on the bin or it could be on a poster next to the bin. It doesn't have to be exactly on the bin, but we do need to be getting the word out there. We've also been conducting some community awareness research to benchmark awareness of battery safety, recycling, disposal, the B-cycle system as a whole. So that'll be also some interesting information that will come out in October. We've got the broader battery safety awareness campaign. We're doing a shoot tomorrow in Sydney of the key messages that have been put together with the the Button Battery Advisory Group, and you would have seen some of this previously, but it's really now coming together, and it's an exciting time for getting that ready for launch in October. We've got ongoing social media and presentations at events and future webinars. And if there's anything you'd like us to present on at a webinar, please let us know. I'm happy to do that. I mentioned we're doing a broader review of the scheme that is really being informed by an economic review. I think the board's keen to look at the overall picture and make sure that we have a strong financial base necessary to achieve our financial objectives and at the same time be really efficient and deliver value for the industry. So there's been a research phase to that, which is being completed in October. And the board will then review and identify the review scope at our next meeting. And then some other important final activities. The board at its last meeting also identified a new category of collections called incidental collector category. That'll be starting in January, and we've got a bit of work to do to put the communications together to let you all know how that's going to work. But it's when we went out to consult with you about this, it was called the aggregator category. We've renamed it to the incidental collector category, but essentially it's a lower rebate for incidental for organisations who don't actually offer a battery collection service, but who do get significant quantities of batteries through their system. For example, a glass recycler who's not at all involved in the business of collecting batteries, but does have a quantity that needs to be disposed of responsibly. And we'd rather that came into the system rather than go to landfill. So we're working out how we can accommodate that. And I think it will be well received by the waste and recycling sector. We're also importer audits, and the idea there is just to verify levy reporting, and that's started about 6 months ago, but we'll be doing an increased number of those over the coming months. We're just finishing off recruitment for an importer engagement manager, and that will be a really good and interesting role. If you know anybody, now's the time to quickly get their resume in because we'll be interviewing for those next week. It has closed, but if you know of anybody who would be particularly great for that role, please do get in touch. The only other two things, we are obviously focused always on getting free riders as minimal as possible. So one of the tasks that I've asked the collectors and recyclers to do is to conduct some brand audits so we can look at which brands are coming into the scheme that aren't members of the scheme. And that way we can target them both from a direct perspective, but through pressure from the department and ideally the minister as well. And finally, we are also continuing to advocate for regulatory reform. So a light form of regulation really just focused on the free rider aspect of this. So if you wanted to read a little bit more about what we're thinking in that space, you could download an issues paper that we've got on the website. But we're working with other schemes and with government agencies to advocate for that type of approach. I think it's a nice mix of having flexibility for industry to make choices and adapt to changing market needs, but at the same time making sure that one of our biggest challenges of free riders is addressed. And I think that's partly why it's attractive to other schemes as well, because for all of the schemes in this space, it's quite frustrating to have free riders when there are such great brands and organisations supporting the scheme and showing leadership. So we really need to make sure that it's that they are also supported by reducing the free rider element. So lots going on at the moment, and really looking forward to continuing to engage with you all as we go through this process, and happy to answer any questions. But if we just pop to the next slide, also just wanted to give a big shout out for the ABRI conference next week, the Australian Battery Recycling and Manufacturing Summit. It's a one-day event, and Catherine and the ABRI team, well, sorry about the typo in the heading there, Catherine, have put a good agenda and a really interesting range of speakers together. So I'd encourage you all to have a look and see whether or not you could fit that into your very busy schedules. Thanks, everybody. Any final questions before we close it out?
Libby, there is a couple of comments in the chat if you are able to have a look.
Okay. Yes, Andrew. Yes, of course, we have to continue to have an efficient system. We don't want costs to go up, but we also have to make the scheme work. So we're just looking at it from all of the different angles. Observations, Isabel, observations in the ACT. Actually, voluntary participation is low. I'm not sure whether you mean voluntary participation of industry or consumers.
Hello,
We
how
are.
are you?
I'm good. Hi.
Hi, am I able to expand on that point just a little bit?
Sure. That'd be good.
Thank you so much for running this as well. It's always nice to get like a little bit of like the opportunity to ask questions before writing anything in.
Mm.
I have also just recently come back from mat leave, so I am feeling a little bit isolated from, I guess, some of the observations or some of the data that might have been collected, and colleagues that might be way more across this. Certainly the feedback, I asked a couple of my team members what our like risks and current issues were, and one of the points that more than one person brought up is that we always struggle with voluntary schemes, like in the ACT. I don't know whether our landfill fees are too low, or whether people are just putting things in household collections. So I'm not sure if it means from like general citizens dropping off or whether it is industry engaging in the scheme. I've just done like a quick Google of like on your website of places that I could drop off locally, and it does, like, that part of it seems quite comprehensive. So I'm guessing in this case it actually means making sure that consumers are bringing back their products.
Yeah, we've definitely got more work to do in terms of increasing visibility and awareness. So that's part of the reasoning for doing the upcoming campaign.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but also I met with Chris Steele, the minister,
Excellent.
a couple of weeks ago, and he's quite keen to partner.
Yes.
I think we're definitely on the same page with ensuring that we divert batteries from the general waste and recycling process.
Yeah, they tend to turn into big fires.
Yes, you had the Hume fire, which was a disaster on Christmas, Boxing Day.
Huge mess.
Yeah.
Huge mess that like could have been, prevented by probably one person putting one battery in a B-cycle bin.
Exactly. And we did some research a couple of years ago, and that's the one that I mentioned we're doing again. And it showed that 63% of people are putting batteries in either in the general waste or recycling bins. So that's going straight into your systems, and that's not what we want. So we need
that are going in general collections. Okay, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So we definitely need to be, it was at the time, this was pre-B-cycle, it was 25% of people were doing the right thing or said they were doing the right thing. But I think we've obviously, a key reason for us living and is this particular issue. So we need to raise awareness, and we'll be partnering with the ACT government, I'm sure, to do some work in that space.
Yeah, great. No worries. Well, thank you so much for the webinar. That's great.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Isabel, can I say though, in regards to changing the postcode from where it's actually in regards to regards to consumer or public input, but also making sure we have a lot of industry that wants to service those areas.
Yeah, and I think in the ACT that the from our like little hyper-local, like my hyper-local assessment, that the postcode framework that you're using at the moment, there's no reason that I can see that it wouldn't work for us, or that it would need to change from an ACT perspective. But yeah, I don't know about Northern Territory, etc. They've got their own challenges. Thank you.
In terms of reasoning, I can't actually, the decision was made quite a long time ago. It was just a good model to use at the time. Was the best decision that we could make, but we're more than happy to look at a different approach if you see benefits of doing that. I think obviously the main driver was to have a differential rate so that we could incentivise regional collections. And so if we need to have a different approach, then happy to consider that. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, thanks, Jade, for putting that together. Much appreciated. And look forward to ongoing discussions with you, and let us know if there's anything else that you'd like to hear from us about.
Thanks, Libby. Thank you, everyone, for attending.